Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special guest, Ms. Renee Shove, who is going to be telling us her story. Renee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So for people who haven't met you or come across you before, can you tell us a bit about your story?
Sure. First, I like to just put it out there, like I started with my depression back when I was a teenager. I had my first suicidal attempt back in my teens, and then again in my 20s, and I've had anxiety and depression for most of my adult life. But back in 2010, I was diagnosed with idiopathic gastroparesis. I'm a nurse, and my gastroenterologist thinks I probably was exposed to a virus at work that caused it. So I dealt on and off with that. I still sometimes deal with that. But in 2019, November 13th to be exact, I got up in the morning and worked out and lifted weights and did everything normal, went to work. And when I came home, I was unable to use my hands and became half paralyzed on the left side of my body, severe weakness. The pain started, and it took quite a few months for a diagnosis. And when I finally got diagnosed, I was diagnosed with chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which is a Guillain-Barré variant, and it causes the myelin sheaths of the nerves to be demyelinated. Kind of like what MS does in the brain, but this was happening in my hands and my feet and arms and legs. And unfortunately was diagnosed about the same time COVID hit the United States. So it was really tough trying to figure out. At that point, I was the director of patient care at our hospital. I had to figure out, do I treat my illness or do I do what I'm supposed to do and work at the hospital? And I decided to try to figure out both. So when I got diagnosed, they did a week of high-dose IVIG, and that treatment is about $100,000 a week.
Jeez.
And yeah, it's $10,000 a bottle, and I had 2 bottles every day for 5 days.
Wow.
And by Wednesday of that first week, I actually could walk unassisted again, like without help. So, I mean, it worked, right? I could tell immediately that it was making me feel better. By this time, I was on nortriptyline, and I was maxed out on gabapentin. So that's 3,600 milligrams a day. And I did high dose, and then it lasted about a month. And then I started to get worse again. So they wanted me to do another week, and the hospital was like, absolutely not. You can't take another week off of work. And I know, but right at the beginning of everybody being scared to death of the pandemic. So I ended up doing weekly for 5 weeks instead, which is not normal, but that was the compromise that my neurologist and I could come up with. So I went on and off IVIG for a couple of years, and then halfway through one of my treatments, I ended up with a severe headache and severe neck pain, and ended up in the ER that night with like atypical meningitis, which is a common side effect of IVIG. I went ahead, they treated me with high-dose steroids, and I got my next 2 IVIGs. He went ahead and finished the cycle and then said I failed treatment, because once that happens, the chances of it happening again are really high. So then I went on monthly IVIG. I quickly failed that. At this point, my pain is like a 9 out of 10, 24 hours a day. People think neuropathy is like just numbness and no big deal, and it is so painful. And I feel bad as a nurse having dismissed all my patients over the years with the neuropathy pain, because you have no idea what it's like to live in chronic pain until you're in chronic pain. So my neurologist put me on rituximab, which is a monoclonal antibody designed to treat B-cell lymphoma, right? Goes in and kills all the B cells. So no immune system at this point. Like every time I looked at somebody, I got sick. And so I did rituximab for the next 2 years. And I got in January of 24. So let's go back. In July of 23, I almost died of COVID. I got COVID so bad, I almost
Yeah.
died. And it's just every time I get sick, I get really sick. It's not just like a little bit sick. So I January, my son left for boot camp last January. And we went to his graduation at the end of February in San Antonio. And I came home with COVID for, I don't know, like the fourth time since I started rituximab, or the fifth. And most of it turns into pneumonia. I'd had the flu earlier, it turned into pneumonia. Like it's awful. And I was at the point in my disease where our youngest son was graduating high school in May. And I told my husband, I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't be in this pain. Nothing helps. I was using, smoking marijuana all the time, hoping that that would take the pain away. I'm maxed out on nortriptyline, maxed out on duloxetine, maxed out on gabapentin. Like, there's nothing to do to control the pain anymore. And in late 23, early 24, I started having to use a cane, which sits behind me to remind me. I had to start using a cane to walk because the weakness on my left side was so pronounced that I would stand up and just like fall over. And I was having lots of falls. And being a nurse in a hospital, it's very humbling to have to go to work using a cane. So in February, I decided to apply for medical retirement because I haven't been able to start an IV in 5 years. I mean, my fingers don't work well enough to even put an IV in. And I applied for medical retirement. And then in March, while I was homesick with COVID, my husband was like, please just watch carnivore videos. He'd been begging me for a long time to like, he goes down rabbit holes all the time. And I was like, I had been telling him no, and I was like, fine, I have nothing to do. I'm sitting on the couch dying of COVID. Watch carnivore videos. And the first video I watched was Carrie Mann doing an update, like a 9-month update on how he was feeling, and he was remarkable. You've seen, I mean, you've talked to him, you've seen his
Yeah.
results.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I came up with Michaela Peterson, and then you, and
Mhm.
then Dr. Baker, and then it just and Dr. Barry, and it just kept going. And I text my husband like halfway through that day, and he was like, "If you don't want to be a carnivore, you better stop me now. Like I am already convinced that this is the way to go."
Yeah.
And so we did
Yeah,
on
nice.
March 20th. We did the let's eat all the food in our house before we go carnivore. Should know we should have just
Yeah.
we should just did it right away because I was already keto. I had already gone keto to see if that would help. And I think that it was very dirty keto. Like I had no idea that there was a better way to do it than to buy all the processed crap food that keto's easy to go down the wrong way. But at least I had already cut the carbs. So I didn't have to go through the keto flu or anything when we first went carnivore. So that was kind of my condensed. I mean, it, being sick, having the gastroparesis, and then getting a second autoimmune disease on top of that, it was just like that kick. How do you deal with two different autoimmune diseases when you barely keep one under control?
Yeah. And then being such a serious one as well, when it's literally preventing you from doing your job, from moving your body. I mean, people don't understand how serious that is until it affects them, and then they really get it. There's this saying that everyone has a million problems until they get a health issue, and then they've got one problem, and they look at the rest of their life like none of those were problems. This is a problem, and it puts everything into perspective. And when you can't physically move your body properly, when your body just won't do what you tell it to, that's a big problem that is it's hard for people to understand until they've experienced it or seen it firsthand and worked with people or had family members who they've seen as strong and virile, powerful, wonderful people, and now they're crippled and debilitated, and you have to help them with every single step. it's remarkable how much of an issue that is. And well, it's I'm very sorry that that happened. But when you went carnivore, what were some of the changes? I mean, presumably, tacitly we think that, okay, well, you got a recovery, but what exactly did happen?
Oh, um, I had committed to just going on beef, water, salt because I figured if I was going to do it, I'd get rid of everything and figure out what,
Mhm.
that was what we did. So for the first 60 days, I did just beef, water, and salt. And within 2 to 3 weeks, the burning in my feet went away and the pain started to get more controlled. And I didn't even realize it. I was laying in bed one night and I told my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, my feet don't hurt. Like tears rolling down my face, my feet don't hurt. And, nighttime's always the worst because that's when you actually stop. And when you stop, the pain is the worst because you actually pay attention to the pain. You kind of just put yourself in overdrive. I'm going to just go through get through the day, get through the day. But when you lay down, that's when you pay attention. And at that point, I remember very vividly, I looked at him and I said, well, if I have to eat a ribeye every single day for the rest of my life to keep the pain away, then I'm there. Just, I mean, that was it. The pain was all the first thing I noticed was the pain. And it didn't take very long for the depression to start to get better. I mean, when I tell people, carnivore saved my life. Okay, first off, it saved my walking. My neurologist told me that I would probably be in a wheelchair by the time I was 50. I'm only 47. So I am like bound determined to not let that happen. So yeah, I did this to save my walking, but I had no idea that like this lifelong depression that I had been dealing with was going to go away. Carnivore saved my life. I was at the point where I was ready to be done. I couldn't handle that pain anymore. And then I have OCD and anxiety, and almost all those symptoms went away. I mean, and then it's stupid things like I haven't had a zit since I went on carnivore. Like, my face was always breaking out. And I have to say that back when I first got diagnosed with gastroparesis, my gastroenterologist, bless his heart, he called me to give me the diagnosis over the phone. We lived in Hawaii when I got sick. I've been in Hawaii for the last 18 years. I'm back in the mainland because my illness, we were at the point where rituximab was like it, and I needed to have options for clinical trials. So we had decided to move back to the mainland prior to going on carnivore. So in Hawaii, my gastroenterologist is on another island. So he calls me to tell me that I have gastroparesis. And he says, we don't know a whole lot about idiopathic gastroparesis. There really aren't any books. There's no guidance. All I can tell you is try to eat white food because it's the easiest for you to digest. It's the fastest to break down. So ice cream and chips and I eat white bread and stay away from red meat, stay away from vegetables, all that stuff is so hard for the stomach to move through.
Well, vegetables certainly, but yeah.
So that was what I was given.
Mhm.
And I was at that point, I had been hospitalized and I had been taken out of work. I was the nursing supervisor at the hospital I worked at that point. And I like literally got off shift and went straight to a hospital room. And my doctor was like, you can't go back to work till you gain 15 pounds. And it took me 3 months to gain 15 pounds. That was 3 months of lots of potato chips.
Oh, gosh.
I know, right? Thinking about it now, it just makes you want like makes me want to puke, but it was what I was told to do. And he was right. There was one book written about gastroparesis on how to manage it as a patient. And as a nurse, I was able to get on the computer and I was able to do research, and there still was nothing out there. There was really no guidance. So that started 10 years of going through every diet in the entire world that I could think of and find to figure out what made me feel the best and what I could deal with. And when I was diagnosed with with the second autoimmune disease in November of 2019, we actually were just coming off of vegan, and we had been vegan for a year. And when I say vegan, we were whole foods, no fake stuff. I mean, like I was really serious about cooking, and I didn't buy anything pre-made. I made everything myself, but it was all vegan. And my poor husband has told me since the day we got together that he is predator, and his teeth are sharp, and he has eyes in the front of his head, and he does not eat vegetables.
For
Uh,
him. Yeah, smart guy.
well, he went vegan with me. Smart guy. I mean,
Well, yeah, it's the
you have to do what you're,
power of love.
it is the power of love.
Mhm.
And my husband was very healthy when we got together. His cholesterol was always better than mine, and I was the low fat. I grew up I was raised in the 80s where we didn't eat fat and we didn't eat animal products. And my dad was, we ate deer and elk mostly because we didn't have a whole lot of money. So we ate what my dad could get. But for the most part, we ate the American Standard Diet, but it was low fat. And, deer and elk have no fat on it. So I had no idea, like eating fat it had been nowhere in my entire life. And then my husband and I got together, and he loved bacon and he loved all this fat. He puts butter on everything. And I was like, you're going to die. I'm gonna watch you have a heart attack and die. But his cholesterol was always better than mine. Always. I mean, he was always looked healthier metabolically than I did. So when we went on vegan, he got up to 212 pounds. Now he's 5'7", 212
Oh,
pounds, type 2 diabetes, on metformin, and
jeez.
depressed and can't get off the couch. Like he'll go to work, he works in the OR, and he would work his 8 hours and come home and sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing the rest of the day. I couldn't get him off the couch. And granted, I realized he was dealing with my illness too. Um, but it wasn't until we started carnivore that it took 5 years for him to start losing that weight. And it wasn't until we got on carnivore. He is now 160 pounds, and he is off metformin, and his hemoglobin A1C is totally normal.
Mhm.
And I mean, look at him, and he's returning back to health, but I almost killed him.
Yeah.
And my
Wow.
quest to find the right diet.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's it just shows that, the motivation. I mean, we're trying to do what's right. We're trying to do what's right for our body, or right in general. And we get fed this line that, oh, we're herbivores and we need to be eating plants and they're so healthy and so wonderful. And people believe it, and they're trying to find something that works because they're sick and they're desperate and they need help. And so they get sucked into this, and maybe they're eating a processed food diet. And so maybe there's that honeymoon period where they do feel better at first and then things start catching up, or maybe they don't even get that. There's plenty of people that just get put on weight and get metabolically sick eating a clean whole food plant-based approach. Oh, well, they didn't do it right, they didn't eat the plants that I would. Who cares what you do? Like, it's
Right.
if there were one way to do a vegan diet, it would be out there. It's like, no, you have to eat it exactly this way, and it's not. People do follow those things. They follow the nutritionists and the gurus and the doctors who say this is what you should eat and this is how you should eat it, and they don't get great results, and certainly not long term. And your husband having that result, I mean, that's certainly not the first time I've heard that. The vast majority of people doing carnivore now that follow me were plant-based at one point because they were on this journey of health. They were trying to find the right thing. And when they discover vegan videos and say, oh, okay, I'm going to go plant-based, everyone says, oh, you're so good, doing your own research. And then it's just like, okay, well, I did more research and I found carnivore unsafe to do your own research. You need to listen to experts. Well, no, those experts don't count. Those are the wrong experts. And it's just quite silly, but it's the same mindset. You're trying to get better. And so they tried vegan, they tried to get better. It did not make them better, maybe for a little bit, but eventually they got a lot worse, or maybe they got worse straight away. There's a lot of people I've spoken to and say, oh, I went plant-based for 6 months, worst decision of my life. It was terrible. I had all these problems, or maybe a year or something like that. and then others maybe last longer, and they're so convinced by the propaganda and the people pushing this lifestyle that they just convince themselves actually they're super healthy, and ooh, how bad would I be if I wasn't on this? This is the only thing keeping me together. And then eventually they realize like, wow, I've been killing myself, and they start eating meat again, and it's like just the light turns on in their brain, and they just feel amazing again. So but it's the right motivations. You have the right motive. You're just trying to get better. You're just trying to do, just trying to be healthy and trying to live a healthy, normal, happy life. And so, of course, try these different things. And it makes perfect sense that you tried vegan because that's just been pumped out there for so long. But, the good news is that when that didn't work, you kept looking, and that's the important thing for people to do.
Right. When I got sick, like I often wonder, I just finished my functional medicine training, and yeah, it talks about when you have an autoimmune disease, you really have to have the three things. It has genetically, you have to have something in you, right? And then it has to be lifestyle or environment things, and then it's
Mhm.
usually a trigger. And it really makes me wonder whether my trigger was the vegan diet.
Mm,
I mean, how do I know that it wasn't and then it makes me
yeah.
wonder what I've ever gotten. Like, would my autoimmune disease have ever activated if I wasn't
Mm,
vegan? I can't,
yeah.
it's what if, could have, should have, can't live
Yeah.
that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, it is what it is. It happens, but there are a lot of people that suffer with autoimmunity and leave a vegan diet because of their autoimmunity. And some people, have autoimmunity, eating whatever, and then go to like a clean, whole food vegan approach and seemingly get a bit better, but most eventually get worse. And and I definitely think it's environmental. I mean, look at celiac disease. It's considered an autoimmune disease that is gluten mediated. I mean, what does that mean? And it's like, well, if you don't have gluten, then you don't get this autoimmune attack on your body. And it's like, okay, well, so the antibodies go away when the gluten goes away? No, 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 they still stay elevated for 3 years after your last exposure to gluten, but they're not attacking your body. No. Okay. So that's not an autoimmune disease, right? Because those antibodies are not auto antibodies. And it's just that your body is getting attacked by gluten. Gluten sticks to your cells, and then your body does exactly what it's supposed to do. It defends your cells. And so it attacks that gluten, but it's stuck to your cells. And so your cells get hit in the crossfire. Makes sense. You stop eating gluten, gluten stops attacking your body, defense backs off, right? And so that's not an autoimmune disease, right? And thankfully we've been able to see that. What I want for people to do, and I don't have a lab, so I can't do it myself, but maybe I can find somebody with a lab. Anybody with a lab, let me know. And but to look and see if in these other autoimmune cases, get tissue samples and see, is the antibody attacking the cell itself, or is it attacking something stuck to one of the antigens on the cells? And because that's what's happening in celiac, and I would bet you that's what's happening in all these other things. Because if your body is, when I was taking immunology 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, it and it was a postgraduate class, right? So this is not like introductory to the immune system. This is 500 level immunology, right? And it was very clear the body can't attack itself under normal conditions. Your cells are matured in your thymus, and they're testing against every single antigen that your body makes, every single molecule that your body makes. And if it reacts even weakly to that, they're killed. So your body will not mature immune cells that have any capacity to interact even weakly with your body. So the idea of molecular mimicry doesn't make sense because it's attacking this and it's similar enough to one of your antigens that it can attack that. No, it's not capable of making something that can attack your body. And so it would make a different antibody towards that something. That's the vegan argument, is that you get leaky gut, and even like I think it was Barnard who actually admitted on camera that, like, oh yeah, if you get leaky gut and then you get these proteins in there, and he's like, and gluten can cause that or whatever. So he's admitting it's a plant toxin, an lectin, that's causing leaky gut. But he's saying that then, when you're eating animal proteins, that those proteins are similar enough to our proteins that you get this reaction with them, and then you get a cross reaction that's completely made up. But that cross reaction shouldn't be able to happen if your immune cells are normal. And if they're not normal, if they've had the capacity to make an antibody that can attack a virus or something and then cross-react, then it could make it in the first place. It could just attack your body in the first place. It doesn't need molecular mimicry. It would just start attacking your body. That is not what we see. And then if your thyroid or your intestines or your nervous system were being considered a bacterial invader, when was the last time you heard your body just like, you know, take the week off when fighting pneumonia? Like that's like this doesn't happen, right? You can't have these ebbs and flows. You can't have flares and remission of an infection if you're actually fighting an actual infection, because you'd be dead. As soon as your body stops attacking, fighting an infection, you die. And so if it were actually treating your nervous system as an infection, it would just have a full court press and just ramp up the attack until it was obliterated, because it has to. Because if that were a pathogen, you'd be dead if it didn't. And so again, that doesn't make any sense. So that's what I think is happening, is that you eat this stuff and it gets into your body through leaky gut. These various lectin, gluten is a lectin. There are plenty of other lectins, and they can go all over your body and they can attack your body. And lectins are strongly associated with autoimmunity. Glyphosate is strongly associated with autoimmunity. So you take these different toxins, be they natural or man-made, and they're attacking your body, and your body's attacking them. That's what I think is happening. And if we can show that in a lab, saying, oh, actually, there's this complex with this little thing sticking onto this, TSH receptor and antigen, and then this antibody is attacking that and stimulating the TSH receptor and giving you Graves' disease. I think that would be very powerful. But that is what it looks like in practice, because when you stop eating those things and you stop eating plants entirely, these problems go away. Even though the antibodies are still elevated, the damage stops and starts to repair. And eventually those antibodies start coming down and down and down. And then you eat the wrong thing, boom, they're back up and you have problems again. So that makes a lot more sense to me.
And my antibodies are 0 now.
Wow, there you go. Yeah.
And I saw my neurologist end of December and had my repeat EMG done. And this is a new neurologist, because my neurologist I left in Hawaii. My neurologist in Hawaii, when I told him I was going to try the carnivore diet, he told me that he couldn't get behind me, that I was a nurse and I knew better, and that wasn't a standard diet, that wasn't a well-balanced diet, and that he wasn't going to support it. And I was like, all right, well, don't support it. You're not the one that is at home crying every night and barely making it through work. And before I got sick, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and lifted weights, and then went to work and worked a 12-hour shift as a nursing supervisor and ran a hospital. And I did that for over a decade. And so this was a huge, it changes everything about you. And so my new neurologist here in Arizona, when I met him, the first thing he did was draw the antibodies, and they came. And when I met him, it was in October. So I've been carnivore since March, and my antibodies were already not, he couldn't find them. They weren't showing up. And so then he started questioning whether I ever had it, but I sent him. So I had Kaiser send him a medical record about that thick with everything.
That's always the way when you get like a good result, they're like, you never had it in the first place. And they're
Right.
like, well, what about all this? Nah, something else.
And then he begged me to schedule my rituximab because I was due. And I, in turn, said, not only do I not want rituximab, I'd like you to start reducing my gabapentin.
Mm.
And by now, I'm off everything but gabapentin. But I've been maxed out on gabapentin for 5 years. So I was like, I want my gabapentin reduced. And he was like, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, because I'm feeling better. And my cane back there, I haven't used it September. I lost it actually for a couple of weeks and didn't even know where it went because I didn't need it anymore. And so when he repeated the EMG in December, and it was completely normal, he did both the conduction and the needle, making sure the nerves are working and the muscles are working. And he did only the left side of my body because that's my weak side, and everything was normal. And
Nice.
so he says, well, I guess you're in remission. And I don't know why. And I was like, well, I do know why.
It's
Like
like I literally told you why. Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you, like I changed what I was eating. And he didn't look at me like I was insane, but he didn't acknowledge that either. Now, my primary care doctor, who I actually drive an hour and a half to go see because he is a carnivore, and he's not in a functional medicine practice, but he's a carnivore. And so I don't have to explain myself to him. I don't have to explain my labs to him. And he is absolutely wonderful. He doesn't look at me, he knows exactly why. In fact, he interviewed me for his Rumble channel. He was like, I know why you're better, and I want
Good.
people to know why you're better.
Yeah,
But
great.
it's funny how other people just they won't acknowledge that this was something that I did. This had nothing to do with the medical treatments I was getting. It had nothing to do with the meds. So he started weaning me off of the gabapentin, and I'm happy to say that I'm down to one dose a day of 1200. So I've cut it by 2/3.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I still have, I mean, it's a long process. 3,600 milligrams is going to take a
Mm,
long time. I've been on it for 5 years. So
mm,
I'm almost off all meds. I am lifting weights again. I'm trying to walk an hour a day, which I mean, I could barely walk when I started carnivore with my cane. And now I'm trying to get an hour a day of walking in. I mean, I never thought that I would get here. I was in a meeting last night with Healing Humanity, and the question was, what was your why when you started and has your why changed? And mine is crazy easy. My why was I wanted to walk. But the really fun thing is that my why is no longer about getting healthy. My why is now about how healthy can I get? Like what can I return to? Can I return to being a weightlifter again? I never thought that I'd be able to hold a weight in my hand ever again at some point in my illness. And I mean, that's amazing. And everybody, that's why I tell my story. I want everybody to know that, this is an awful autoimmune disease, and I'm coming out of it and in remission for some unknown reason.
yeah, yeah. It's just idiopathic remission. We have no idea why. Could it be the car? We have no idea why. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you were saying.
No, go ahead.
I was saying that I have a patient who put her MS into remission by doing, strict red meat and water diet only. And not only did her symptoms go into remission, she was very, very um, debilitated by this neurologically. She's uh, very difficult to walk, and needed walking aids and things like that. And she wanted to do carnivore. Her neurologist said that is a huge mistake. You're being reckless with your health. You're going to end up in a wheelchair and you're going to die. Yeah, this is a horrible idea. And she's just like, and she literally she left there in tears, but she refused to take the medication. She went on carnivore and she felt so good. She refused to take the repeat medications. And um, then 8 months down the track, she was scheduled for an MRI. She got an MRI, and her lesions, her CNS lesions, had actually reduced by over 40% in just 8 months. And her neurologist said to her when reviewing the scan, I don't, I have no idea why this happened. I cannot explain this. I've never seen it happen. I've never heard about it happening. I have no idea why it happened. And she said, well, do you think it might have been the diet? Absolutely not. So, and she just went, you're dead to me. I'm not wasting my time with you anymore.
Right.
And she's doing great. She's doing absolutely amazing. So, we're getting ready to publish a case series actually with a dozen of these people. We could have done 50 or 100. I mean, we had enough people who were interested in doing this, but it sort of it takes a long time to do all these sorts of things. So um, that's well, we're working on it now. It's not ready for publication, but it's just case after case after case after case of not only symptomatic improvements, but objective neurological reduction in their neurological lesions. And yeah, again, so, oh, but did you really have MS? I mean, that's the question we have to show that, like, no, they've had MS. We have one guy, very interesting guy. He's been on it a long time, and this is the great part because he's been on it so long. We're seeing, well, okay, what happens years down the road. Okay, well, he's a case. This happened. And he figured it out himself. He didn't have like, oh, okay, well, I'll give the carnivore diet a try. There wasn't anything called that. But he's a smart guy. He's an executive level guy at Fortune 500 companies. So he's like, look, I go into companies and I see what's wrong and I fix them. So I'm going to do that for myself. It's like, okay, what is the nervous system made out of? What is the myelin sheath made out of? What are these things? Okay, I need to get like this is an inflammatory process. What's going to reduce inflammation? So he ended up going to, a high fat, meat based, heavily ketogenic diet, and it was nearly carnivore. He had a couple sort of dark leafy greens for the supposed anti-inflammatory effects, but it's a very small amount. And he specifically had them separate. He would eat them like a pill. He would not eat them with meat because he understood about the anti-nutrients and how that would actually block out the absorption there. So he figured all this out himself. He had primary progressive MS. And so his first presentation nearly crippled him. And he had multiple lesions, like over a dozen lesions. He had a five, I think it was a 5 centimeter lesion in his brainstem. All right.
Oh, wow.
So, and he had, because he can afford it and he has access to it. He had the number one MS doctor in New York, which was, one of the best in the world. And this is all they do. And they go after this. And he said, look, I'm going to try this. I'm going to give this a try. And they're like, all right, well, give it a try. They were at least open-minded about it. But they were like, that's not really going to do anything. It's not really going to help. Look, just leave everything to me. Leave the treatment to me. Just don't stress about it. Just you do your thing, and I'll take care of this. But he was like, nah, no, I'm not gonna not gonna do that. And so he started doing it his way, and he started getting better and better and better and better and better. And now, because of his how good he went, this neurologist actually they have a wing in their department that they actually get people on this thing. So actually that's actually being practiced now. I don't know if they're publishing it or they're sort of keeping it as their own proprietary sort of information so that they can like, ooh, we'll get the best results for MS if you come to us sort of thing, because that unfortunately happens. There was in New York, there's an anecdote. There's some hospitals in there, and as people try to come around and say, hey, you have the best outcomes for head injuries, traumatic brain injuries, and things like that. We want to study what you guys do so that we can replicate this at other hospitals. And I said, absolutely not. That's proprietary information. That's why people come to us, because we get the best results. We don't want our competition knowing that. It's like, this is not competition. This is human health. And, you don't get to do that, and so hopefully they start publishing this sort of stuff. But he had primary progressive. He had massive lesions. It's now, I think it's like 6 or 8 years down the road. He's in his 50s playing semi-professional volleyball. He's ripped. And on MRI, he has basically no sign of disease. He had a bit of scar tissue in a couple areas. Like, so that 5 centimeter lesion that he had in his brainstem is now 1/8 of an inch, and it looks like a bit of scar tissue. It's gone.
That's
Right?
insane.
Yeah, it is. And so, this is something that doctors really have to wake up on, and they see someone like you, oh, we just don't know what it is. Maybe ask why. Maybe look into it, because people used to have curiosity. They used to think about things going, hey, why is it? That's what case reports were. Alzheimer's disease started with a single case report of I think a 76-year-old lady back in 1906, and said, hey, look, this is really weird. We've never seen this before. And look where that went. It's like it's important to think about why these things are happening, and saying, okay, that's weird. Why is that? Let's look into that. Could that be why? Okay, maybe look into it. Well, there's anti-inflammatory properties of being in a ketogenic diet. Just the ketones are going to suppress inflammation. Okay, there's this principle: lectins are highly associated with autoimmunity. Glyphosate's heavily associated with autoimmunity. Well, wouldn't that suggests that removing them might improve autoimmunity? If there's an association, there could be causation. So, you try to remove it, see if there's something. And what is the brain made of? What's the myelin made out of? You need to get those things. B12, that's required for myelinating your axons. Where does that come from? It comes from meat. DHA, EPA, cholesterol, saturated fat. These are really important things that you need. And so if you start thinking about it logically, like this gentleman did, As a doctor, I mean, you should be able to draw your own conclusions and come to this. I mean, if a guy with no medical training was able to look at this and say, okay, well, how do I address this? What's it made out of? What process do I need to stop? How do I do that? You know, then, you should be able to figure that out. Sometimes it does take, outsiders looking in that don't have these preconceived notions that aren't thinking inside the box being everything you were taught in medical school. This is the box, and everything out there is, oh, that's can't happen. That's inside the box thinking. I mean, I remember commercials when I was a kid. Think outside the box. I was like, where were they with these when they were kids? Like they missed those commercials, I guess. But you look at it from a different point of view, and you try something new, you might get a new result. If you keep doing the same thing, you'll always get the same results, and those results are not great.
Right. And as a nurse, I blindly just followed what I was told to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't, I eventually, out of desperation, questioned what was happening, but I didn't question through that 5 years, you know, is there a better way to do this than to be putting all of these awful drugs inside my body? That was what they told me to do, and I did it. I mean, I wish I would have been able to look at it and been like, you know what? No, there's got to be something different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the assumption is, and the hubris is that, well, people have been looking at this and studying this, and if there was a better way, they would have figured it out. Someone would have figured it out. That's very lazy thinking. Someone would have done it. Someone would have figured it out. Well, they didn't. I guess if iPhones were possible, someone would have figured it out in the 1800s. Tesla talked about things like an iPhone, but he didn't come out with one. So it's you try different things. When Henry Ford said, if I followed the market and the demand, all these sorts of things, I followed what was going on at the time, then I would have started a buggy whip company and tried to make an even better buggy whip. But he just went straight out in the left field and said, no, we're doing something completely different. We're gonna go hard left on this. And that's what you have to do sometimes. The inside the box thinking, this is the box, this is everything I've learned in medical school, and these are the boundaries. This is all true and it can never be false. Outside the box thinking supposes that, well, maybe that isn't true. It's in mathematics, people might understand is non-Euclidean geometry. Euclidean geometry is the normal geometry that we see, but it has these axioms, right? So Euclid came up with the different sorts of things. Okay, what can I prove? What can I show that this happens every time? These mathematical proofs, right? And some things that he couldn't prove, but they were just true all the time, so they're axiomatic. Like the angles of triangles always add up to 180, right? And so the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. All these other sorts of things, right? So non-Euclidean geometry sort of drops one of those axioms. Like, oh, well, let's assume that it's not true. But what if triangles don't necessarily all their angles have to add up to 180? Things change very differently. And this is actually why we talk about space being curved and bent and things like that, because deep space seems to act in a much more non-Euclidean geometric way. And that's actually really, really interesting. And so that's what we have to do. We have these axiomatic assumptions in medicine and the rest of the world. We say, nope, this is true and it can't possibly be untrue. And you just say, well, what if it's not? How would you approach this then? It's very different, and that's how you get new ideas and new discoveries. And you have to do that. You have to question things, or else you're just going to stay in a rut. You're just going to stay getting the same old tired results, and those are not acceptable.
Right. I agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Those of us out here who are, suffering and think that there is no hope, it's doctors like you guys that are putting this information out there, and you're not hiding it. You're not saying, well, this is my proprietary Dr. Chaffee way and no one else can have my way. You're putting it out there for the whole world, and not just the medical community, but for people like me who are in desperation looking for a way to heal ourselves.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. It's it's the right of everybody. It's a basic human right to be as healthy as your biology allows. We're being sick because we're being poisoned. We're being exposed to things that aren't supposed to be there. Some things that never existed, like glyphosates and these other unnatural products that are all man-made. I mean, there's over 1 million different man-made chemicals that have been patented since the 1970s alone. Right? What the hell do these things do? These are things that don't exist in nature, have never existed in nature, have never been exposed to humans, and most of them are in the food, agrochemical, and cosmetic industry. So these are things that are being directly applied or ingested by humans constantly. And we have no idea what these things do. Well, they don't have calories, so it's fine because that's the only thing that matters. It's like, well, they have chemicals and these have chemical reactions inside of your body. And so that's very important to understand that. There's this very strange system that we live in now that things can be exposed to humans or put in the food supply without any evidence that it's safe or beneficial. And it's only after it's caused so much harm that we're able to pull it out. Things like trans fats. Trans fats were invented well, there was an industrial lubricant for in the German military before this, but Crisco bought it in 1911, started putting it in the food supply, Procter and Gamble bought it and sold it as Crisco in 1911. So that's been in the food supply since 1911, trans fats, and we have pretty good evidence that trans fats lead to or are very atherogenic and cause heart disease and plaques and things like that. I knew that in the 90s. My organic chemistry professor in 2000 at University of Washington, he was all over that, and he was talking about how this is not something that exists in nature. Those trans bonds are not something that exists in nature, and our bodies can't deal with them because of these chemical properties, etc. And so they just build up and get deposited because your body doesn't know what to do with it, so it just stuffs it off in the little corners and things like that, and you build up plaques. And I thought it was sort of done at that point. You started about it's like, oh yeah, they're banning trans fats and this, that, and the other. Trans fats did not get banned until 2020. I just read that. I had to look it up because I just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, how the hell? So over 100 years of harm and probably 2 decades of like clear evidence of people saying like, no, trans fats are really bad before they actually ban the damn stuff. And so, that's totally backwards. You have to prove something's healthy before you put it in the food supply and start feeding it to people. And especially when they say, oh, polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils are actually really good for you. Like, there's no evidence for that. That was just the American Heart Association. This is in the newspaper. It's not, and top medical journals. Procter and Gamble paid the American Heart Association the equivalent of $20 million in today's valuation to just make up a story about how polyunsaturated fats and seed oils were super heart healthy, and that butter and lard, etc., were bad for your heart. It was completely made up. It was based on no evidence. Now the evidence is, well, the American Heart Association says so. That's the evidence, but they made it up, and we know they made it up, and we know that they were paid to make it up, and yet it just persists. Glyphosate got put in and being able to use, sprayed on crops in order to desiccate them and make them ripen all at the same time. So you can all be harvested at the same time and get a better crop yield. And so this is being sprayed on directly before harvest, which means it's not going anywhere. Right. That it's going into the food supply. And they say, oh, well, it breaks down within a day or so. Really? Have you read the back of a bottle of Roundup? It says once you spray an area, you can't plant there for sometimes over a year. Like, so that doesn't make sense. And there have been independent labs that have found like just loaves of bread with 6,000 times the upper limit of the acceptable level of glyphosate. And the only reason it was ever put in the food supply in the first place was because Monsanto or whomever, Bayer, whoever, did a study in mice, so not humans, but mice, and they exposed them to glyphosate. And for 3 months, they didn't show any problems. But it's just like you're talking about putting this in the food supply forever. So 3 months is not long enough, right? And but that was it. They were able to convince whoever in charge, who they probably paid off, to approve this to put in the food supply. Yeah, I think it was in 1993, and it's just massively increased since then. You know, in the real scientific world, when people are being serious, they don't take any study at face value until it's been replicated at independent labs separately. Follow the same protocol, get the same results. And if it's not replicated, it's just not any good. It's like, okay, that's interesting, but we'll need to see that happen again. And this was not replicated. When it was replicated, it was well after glyphosate had been being used in the food supply. And an independent lab did this, replicated it, but instead of just doing it for 3 months, because why would you? This is a lifetime thing. He just let the rats go. And at 3 months, yeah, the rats were fine. At 4 months, not so much. They started getting a lot of problems, and they started getting very serious metabolic issues, very seriously ill, getting weird, endocrine tumors and things like that. And they all just died horrible, miserable early deaths. And so there's a lot of that in the literature. It's not the science, and because it's not scientific, it's fraudulent, it's just propaganda, it's part of their marketing department. But there's a lot of this in the literature where they falsify their study so it's not replicable, or they make retrospective endpoints. So they'll run the study out and they see, oh, about 4 months, the wheels start coming off and these mice start to die or get sick anyway. And so it's just like, okay, but at 3 months they were good. So yeah, 3 months it is. And then it stops it there. So, that's fraud, and those people that are putting these papers out are getting attacked. They're trying to get their tenure taken away. They're trying to get their grants taken away. They're trying to the Monsantos and Bayers and Pfizers of the world and Nestle's, etc. They actually are major sponsors of all these top medical journals as well as the conferences. So they actually have a lot of control as to what gets published, and people are running into brick walls going like, why can't I get this published? Like Dr. Stephanie Seneff, who's been a research scientist at MIT since the 80s, and she's a tenured faculty member, and she, has been pumping out brilliant research for 40 years. And yet, people say, oh, no, we can't do it. Now she's a bulldog. So she's just like, I'm, getting these things published. But because she's publishing on the negative aspects of glyphosate, these powers that be, the people that stand to lose money from this, are really trying to suppress her work. And it goes on like this. So it's it's pretty nasty stuff. But I've sort of been on about 5 different tangents, but I did want to ask you, neurologically, how are you doing now? You're off your medication, and you're back working out, but do you feel that you're back to your baseline before this started, or how are you feeling now?
No, I try to make sure that people understand that I'm not back to baseline. I'm not normal still. I'm doing occupational therapy and physical therapy, and like it's gonna take it took 5 years for my nerves to get as destroyed as they are. So it's gonna take time for them to get back. There are nights that the pain in my hands, especially if I've been really busy that day, I still hurt.
Mhm.
But overall, I would say that I am 100% better than it was last time, this
Mhm.
time last year. But I have some healing to go still. And I have to remind myself, sometimes I get really, really sad because I want it now. And, my husband has to remind me it took 5 years to get here. Yeah, it's only been, we're getting ready to come up on our year, next month of being on carnivore. So the healing I've had in a year is remarkable. Like there's nothing that the allopathic medical healthcare system could have given me to bring me to where I am right now. So I will continue, it's stupid things like I would love to be able to start an IV again. And I'm never going back to allopathic medicine. I've finished my nurse coaching, and I'm sitting for my boards this spring, and I'm going to help others do the same thing that I did. So I'm not going back to allopathic medicine, but that stupid little part of me is like, all I want to be able to do is start an IV again, darn it. Like, because that's just the fine motor skills that I haven't had. My writing is getting better again. I can read my writing. For the last couple of years, I couldn't read my writing, and I'm starting to be able to read it again. I don't look at it and like, what did I write? My typing is getting better again. Like the things when I got sick, I was the nursing supervisor at the hospital, and I ended up having to apply for a promotion so I could get off the floor and go to an office, which is, to me, that was a demotion, not a promotion, because I wanted to be out with the patients. Like that was what I wanted to do. That's why I became a nurse. And after 20 years of taking care of patients, it was really hard to step back. But it got to the point, even in my office job, like I had to have a heater in my office at the hospital. I had to have a waiver to be able to have a heater in my office at the hospital, because my hands, if I got cold in the air conditioning, I couldn't move them. Like they would just get frozen. And so it was getting to the point where I could work less and less at work. And I was actually working remotely more than I was working at the hospital. And it just wasn't. So I retired September, the end of September was my retirement. And so I haven't worked. I've been full-time student since then. And I'll I have a YouTube channel that is never going to go anywhere really, but I wanted my story out there. And I only did it because Carrie told me I had to do it. He was like, do it, do it, do it. And I said, well, if one person watches it and gets something from it, then that's all that matters. Because I met early on in my carnivore journey, I met a lady on Instagram from Vietnam who has CIDP, and she had been carnivore for 3 years, and she was 100% back to her baseline at 3 years.
Yeah, wow.
And so that gave me hope.
Hmm.
Like I met somebody that has exactly what I have and is telling me that she is back to completely normal. And so I want somebody else to know that, hey, this can happen. It really can. And I have faith that in the next couple of years, I'll be 100%, I'll be back to 100% or even better, because I'm not vegan anymore. So I'll be even better. My muscles grow so much faster now than they did when I was vegan. It's funny, all the different things. And I pretty much eat, for the most part, I'm BBBE with a little bit of shrimp every once in a while. But I don't eat much more than beef,
Yeah,
because that's what I do the best on.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I can eat, like I ate chicken for the first time a couple months ago. And chicken used to be my favorite go-to, right? Low fat and healthy. And it made me sick. Like it made my body hurt. I was like, nope, no more chicken. And it was within like an hour that I knew
Mhm.
that it was something that I couldn't do again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising how quickly that hits you. When I was sort of experimenting, early on, I go to a restaurant, maybe had some seasonings on. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to eat this, or like chicken wings or something like that. And they put the sauce on it. I'm like, oh, damn it. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'll just try and see. And within 20 minutes, my face is itchy, my nose is stuffy, starting to feel like I'm getting like a bit of asthma, and it's like, oh, this sucks. Like I really don't like that. But it's surprising how quickly it hits you, and which is it's which makes, if there is something in there that's harmful to you and it is harming you, that would make sense that you're gonna see that. But so many people that just have all these inputs, we're eating so much garbage all day, every day, that it just fades into the background of the misery that is your life. So yeah, I noticed that as well. I was gonna ask as well, if it's okay to say, who's the doctor you're seeing in Arizona? It's always good to sort of, you know, get a bigger network.
For my primary care,
Primary care, yeah. Yeah,
um,
the carnivore one.
Dr. Sigaloff, I
I
think,
wondered that. Yeah. Yeah.
do you know
No,
him?
I know him. I do know him. Yeah. And
He-
I wondered if that was him. Yeah.
yeah, he says he's been trying to get on your radar.
Yeah, no. We talk on Instagram and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
I like
he
him.
he is he's a lot of fun, and it's great to finally have someone on my side in my
Mhm.
healthcare that
Yeah.
doesn't just be like, I had asked um I belong to an Arizona carnivore group, and I had asked, does anybody know a carnivore friendly doctor? We're getting ready to move to Arizona. I want to have somebody who isn't going to look at me like I'm growing two heads when I tell him I'm a carnivore. And he was recommended to me. And so we drive a little bit further. We bought out in the middle of nowhere. We don't have any neighbors. Well, I
Nice.
decided that it's nice until my husband, he has to drive into Tucson to get to the hospital that he works at. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
like an hour and 20-minute drive for him every day.
Oh, wow. That's like farther than Phoenix. I mean, it only takes like an hour and a half to get to
We're
Phoenix.
where we're at is 3 hours from Phoenix. So
Yeah,
we're
right.
north
Okay.
south of Tucson. We're in
Okay. Yeah.
between Tucson and Mexico.
Yeah, right. Yes. You go to Nogales a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not far from Nogales.
Yeah.
But it I would rather drive the extra distance to see him
Mhm.
than have a doctor who tells me that I'm a nurse and I know better.
Yeah.
And even my primary care doctor, she had trained at the University of Arizona and did their integrative medicine program. So when we told her we were going to do carnivore, she said she was 100% behind it. First time cholesterol was drawn. I have an email from her that says you need to rethink your diet. This diet is killing you, and we need to talk about statins.
The diet's actually saving my life. So, I think the evidence
Right.
is completely the other way. It's the only thing that's helping me. In
Right,
fact,
but they don't want, and I say they because I'm gonna put everybody in this bucket. The
Mhm.
nurses that I worked with, bless all their hearts, the doctors that I worked with. These are people who have known me. I was at the same hospital for 18 years. So these are people that I have worked with for that long, and they watched me get really, really sick. And in the last year, before I retired, they watched me progressively get better and better and better. And none of them, they won't acknowledge that it is carnivore. Like
It's been the treatment.
something,
Hmm.
and it's funny because how did we get, especially nurses, you talk about the box, but we're taught to think outside the box because that's part of our critical thinking of being a nurse, because sometimes our patient care doesn't fit inside of a box. And how come all of these people can't see outside of that box, that maybe something, maybe this is what has made me better. And they're like, you're not going to return to a hospital once you get better. And I'm like, why would I go back to what was killing me? Like, I had the stress of that. I don't think I would have gotten better if I had stayed where I was. I needed to, that whole change needed to happen because it was removing the stress, and it was removing all the food, and it was eating the proper human diet. But it all played a part. I sleep better now. I feel better. I function better. My brain functions better. I mean, part of that could be the gabapentin that I no
Yeah.
longer have
Yeah.
clouding my brain.
Mhm.
But it's absolutely incredible. I never thought that life could get better again.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people try to explain this away and say, well, you were on treatment, and so that makes sense, ignoring the fact that the treatment has never, ever put anyone into remission and dropped
Right.
their antibodies down to zero, ever.
Right.
Unless it's killed them and everything's gone down to zero.
Right.
You
The
know?
treatment was never to cure me.
No.
I mean, there was never the word cure, the word heal was never used in any of my treatment over the last 5 years. It was all, well, let's see if we can mitigate some of the symptoms.
Yeah.
It was all symptom management.
Yeah.
And then how many meds did I end up on because of this medicine caused this problem? And it was just like this cascade of, so no one ever said, well, let's try to heal you. Instead of, I remember I told my neurologist once a couple years ago, he used to roll his eyes at me all the time because I'd be like, well, maybe I'll try acupuncture and see if that helps the pain. And he just rolls eyes at me. But I told him once, I'd like to what is the chances I can get off the gabapentin? I'd like to get off the meds. And he goes, well, why would you want off the meds? And I said, well, because I don't want to take medicine the rest of my life. And he goes, but you have a lifelong illness and you're going to need the meds the rest of your life. I have patients that have been on these meds for 20 or 30 years. You're just going to have to, I mean, that's your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you for not accepting that, because so many people go into that and go like, well, I guess this is it. And I just have to do this. And, thank God for medicine that I even have this option because otherwise, I'd just be in a hard place. And that is true. If you don't have any other alternative, then then treating the symptoms, at least there's that,
Right.
but still look, don't just settle for that. Don't just settle for good enough, strive for more. And I really appreciate the fact that you did that and are sharing your story with others. And I really do think that you should continue on with your YouTube channel because you never you never know. I mean, the thing is, I thought there was probably no point in starting a YouTube channel because I was just like, well, there's a lot of people out there, market's saturated, people are saying the things that I want them to say, maybe not exactly the way I'd say it, but the ideas are out there, the plant toxins, the meat being good for you, saturated fat being good for you, cholesterol being bullshit. Um, and or cholesterol causing heart disease being bullshit. And and then I just said, okay, well, maybe I'll just put stuff out there, and it just slowly but surely grew. And because the thing is that what I realized was that um, people hear information differently from different people, and just the different presentations speak very differently to certain people. And so when I started this, I started saying these things. I cannot tell you how many comments I got on my videos saying, I've heard these ideas before, and I've heard people talk about them, but it was only when you said it the way you said it that it actually made sense to me, and I wanted to try it, and now I'm getting all these great results. And so, I'm going to be able to say something in a way and communicate it into a way that's going to make sense to certain people. But a lot of other people, it's not going to make sense to. And I mean, just, like they're just going to be like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're just going to kill people and all that sort of stuff. You're going to get those, but you might say it in a way and from a position that they say, well, hold on a second, maybe that makes a bit more sense now. And maybe they start looking at things differently. And so I would definitely do that, especially from your own lived experience. I mean, I haven't had a debilitating autoimmune disease. I've just seen people with them get better, but you having done that and be like, no, this is very clear, and you can say that, that's a very powerful um, position to be in, that you can help other people, especially with that condition. So I would definitely encourage you to just keep going with it. The key to YouTube and any social media is this consistency. You just keep posting, just keep posting, just keep posting, and you try to do things that are interesting, and there's different ways of getting things out there, better thumbnails and catchy titles and all that sort of stuff. And it does make a difference, trust me. But the key is just consistency. Just keep putting it out there, keep putting it out there. And if nothing else, you're going to help. You're going to help, certain people, and then you're going to get more interviews on bigger channels, and people are going to see you like, oh, I saw you on this and saw you on that, and we saw your channel, and that's going to get you other interviews, and that's going to get other people wanting to be on your channel as well to talk about their recovery. And it's just going to grow from there. So I would definitely do that. The more voices that we have, the better. And especially coming from different points of view, coming from professionals, coming from someone who has been a nurse and run hospitals. And now you've left that and saying like, this isn't the way, guys. You've been in there, you know, for your entire career on the inside running these hospitals. You see how they work, and you realize that they don't work all that well, and we need to change something to make it better. So I think that's a very, very powerful position and message that you could share with people.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I I will continue to, if anything, like I said, it helps one or two people, or and then with my coaching clients, I have some place to send them to watch my story. I
Yep.
don't have to sit there and waste an hour of, my time rehashing my story every time. But um I I appreciate that you have a YouTube channel, because it is because of you that I even continued carried down, like, and decided that this was maybe this was an okay thing to do. Because you know that that medical side of you, everything screams in there and it says no, no, no. Like, humans can't sustain just on, you know on meat. And like, if I think about it now, I had a kale and Swiss chard salad every single day for like years and years and years for lunch. And now I think about that and it just makes you like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have ground beef for lunch. Um, but like, I think about what I used, how I thought that I was taking care of myself to how I am now. And, my family, I think they get tired of hearing me talk about carnivore. Not, all of them say that they're not sick, so they don't need it. And that's their thing. My 19-year-old son, who is in the Space Force, is a carnivore. And I have a freshman in University of Hawaii, and I think that he'd be carnivore if the vending machines didn't take my credit card.
That's funny.
But, just the just trying to get as many people as I can to listen.
Mm.
And I'm that person that will tell everybody. My husband says, "Come on, we need to go. Don't talk to them." And I'm like, "Yeah, but they need to hear about carnivore."
Yeah, I've definitely gotten the same from my fiance Elle. She's just like, why are you spending so much time like talking to people online? This and that. I was like they need help. They've asked real questions. They need help. Like I can answer them. I need to at least try. I can't answer everything, but I try, and sometimes I'll spend like hours just responding to messages and comments and things like that if I feel that they're, something that A, I can help with, and B, um, I have time for, and C, is something worth answering. And it's just like, it's like the normal stuff. It's like I've got 50 videos on there. Like, you don't have to ask me, just ask YouTube. Like, there's enough there.
Right.
But I try to help as many people as I can. And because it's important, because you see how much it helps. And you got into nursing to be with people on the ground floor. And this is that, you're helping people. You're getting out there and you're talking to people, you're helping them, and you're telling them something that can actually change their life completely. And
But for the first time in my nursing career, I get to try to heal, not just treat.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not just symptom management and disease
Yep.
management, but actually curing things.
Yep.
And it's been clinically proven to be able to cure diabetes. That's a major progenitor of so many different chronic diseases and issues. And so, you can say that you can cure these things. And some people say, well, it's not really a cure, because if you stop eating it that way, the problems come back. It's like, yeah, I guess you can never cure lead poisoning either, because as soon as you go back to drinking water from lead pipes, lead poisoning comes back. Well, that's bullshit. You guys, you need to think about these things and be clear about what's causing the problem. The problem is exposure. We're being poisoned, or we're being malnourished. And so when you give people the proper nutrients and remove the toxic elements, they get better. It's not hard. And people even say that trying to detract from a carnivore diet. Well, all it is just an elimination diet, just getting rid of all these things that can cause harm. Yeah, that's the entire point. You want to get rid of things that cause harm, and just get things, and just have your nutrients and get your proper nutrition. That is
Yep.
the whole point. And it is so powerful, because we're being exposed to so many toxins, be they these million man-made chemicals that have been patented since the 1970s, or the million plus plant defense chemicals that we know exist, that we've classified, categorized, and named. And the combination of those things are really hurting us. And just not living to our natural biological design, never going outside, sitting under garbage light, not exercising, not being normal humans. We have no semblance of a circadian rhythm and normal hormonal pattern, just because of our lifestyles. And, when you get away from our biological design, problems happen. And animals get this as well. Dogs and cats get diabetes and lupus and cancer and all these different sort of things. They don't if they get fed properly and live a more natural existence. Same with zoo animals, same with all animals out in the wild. So, it is really nice to be able to give somebody something so powerful, especially when someone has like cancer or something like that. I mean, like I have this, I tell my girlfriend, I was like, look, this is going to be a while. I've got to answer this, and you just when you know that there's something that can help somebody, and it's a critical issue, like how do you not spend 5 minutes helping them and at least pointing them in the right direction? Having videos is really helpful. Like that was 90% of the reason I made a channel, was so that I could have something so I didn't have to spend all this
Right.
time in a 10-minute clinic appointment in neurosurgery. I could just, because if you've got 30 patients to see, I cannot spend all that much time with them. Now I can just point them at these videos. Just say, hey, you need to watch this. This can help with, reduce inflammation and degenerative, disc disease and spine disease. This is all from glycation and things like that. We've shown that. You're taking samples and putting them in their lab. They're all heavily glycated, and same with other joints and things like that. You need to go watch this. You need to go see this and all that sort of stuff. And so it's nice to be able to do that. But like, how do you have someone sit in front of you and say, they've just been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and they say, is there anything else I can do? Is there anything that I can do to help this? How do you then just go, no, sorry, just move along to your oncologist, and they'll sort you out?
Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean, like that's not ethical, and you have to, it's immoral, it's unethical, it's immoral, it's evil. Like, you have to say something. You have to, how do you withhold that? Something that could help them, not necessarily, cure them of cancer, but at least help them, and it can help them because there are dozens of studies on GBM specifically in humans showing that it helps them. And, case reports published of people living 10 years plus on just ketogenic carnivore diet approaches. How do you just blank them and just be like, no idea how to help you. There's nothing you can do. Just go off and die. Like, you can't do
Right.
that. I mean, not if you
Awful.
have a soul,
Right.
not if you have any sort of conscience. So yeah, I'm with you. I spend a lot of time, doing that sort of thing because it's important. It's not just because, I just want to feel like, I can tell you something. I'm interested. This saves people. This saves them, a lot of agony and illness. Like, how do you not spend time and tell people about it?
Right. No, and we people appreciate it. I mean, honestly, I don't know where I would have been. It, it took it was enough hearing it from Carrie and enough hearing it from Michaela, but it took me having to hear it from a doctor, right? That's and as a nurse, of course I want to hear it from the medical field, but even normal people who are not in the medical field, they still need to hear it from a doctor too. I mean, we're programmed to believe that everything doctors tell us is the truth, which maybe it's their little bucket of truth. Um, but um, because you are out there and your stuff is out there, and because Dr. Baker and because Dr. Kiltz and because all these wonderful doctors are putting their stuff out there, that gives us hope. And so don't stop doing what you're doing either,
Yeah, totally.
ever. I mean, I just watched your interview with Rena the other day, that you did, and I have been doing this, I have been immersed in this rabbit hole for a year, and there were things that I was like, oh my gosh, now that finally makes sense why that is that way. Or, so you're right, it's how you say it, and it's different ways, and it's the different presentations. So that will be my number one. Send everybody to a video when they want to know about carnivore, because you answered every single question the way it needed to be answered.
Oh, thank you. Which one was that? I've done a couple with Rena.
It was the latest one. All the things new carnivores need to know, or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It had
Uh,
just come out. We took a trip to Tucson and listened to it on our way up there. And my husband said the same thing. He's like, "This is the best one I've heard yet."
yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, that's great.
So, because it's
Yeah.
just the way the information was laid out.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
So,
that. And I'm glad it was very helpful. That's always good to hear.
right.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and tell us your story. I think it's absolutely incredible. I love what you're doing, and I love that you're sharing this with people because it's so important. I mean, with the recovery that you've had, if other people can get this as well, then that's really important to get this out to them so that they can at least have a chance at helping themselves and improving their situation. Um, where do people find you and see your videos, your YouTube channel, social media, things like that?
Instagram and YouTube is the same thing. It's at eating meat to walk.
Okay. Eating meat.
And I also belong to a couple of amazing communities, Steak and Butter Gang and Healing Humanity Life. And I'm very happy to be part of amazing communities.
Nice. And then and you're doing coaching as well? Can they find that through the social media outlets?
Right now, I'm finishing up my hours to sit for my boards.
Okay.
And then I hopefully, this is not going to be news for Carrie. I'm hopefully going to be a coach for Healing Humanity.
Okay.
And they haven't quite gotten there yet, and we're working on it. But right now I am finishing up school and I can be reached on Instagram. I always answer my messages, everything, because I know what it's like to be in that place. So
Okay.
I can be reached there.
Perfect. Well, I will put those down in the descriptions below, and everyone can find you there. And if people um, have experienced something like this, or they know someone with CIDP or any other neurological issue or autoimmune issue they've recovered from, please comment down below and tell us about that because one of the strongest things that people some of the strongest um, influences that people have is looking at those personal testimonies, seeing this, and then they read in the comments and they look at these just hundreds of other people that have had the same results and the same benefits or know someone that has. And that really helps people say, okay, well, maybe this could work for me as well. Like, they'll read a comment and say, well, that's me. Those are my symptoms, those are my problems, and this worked for them. And 50 other people in the comments. So maybe this is something I should try. And then they try it and it works quite often. So please do leave a comment if you know anybody who's recovered or of any sort of carnivore recovery as well. It's so important to get these stories out there and just share that with the community. Renee, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing.
No, great. Well, it was my pleasure, really. And thank you all for watching. Please do leave a comment and let us know your story or a similar story to Renee's, and like and share. And please do go to Renee's channel and watch her videos and support her there. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.